So we're going to do a quick overview of delivering difficult news. The first part's just going to be, since we're running late, we're going to do a quick small lecture, and then the rest is going to be mostly small groups. Just wanted to thank Noah, Priscilla, Monisha, and then the small group leaders that are going to be here today. Dr. Willis, Wolfram, Dr. Stetz, Dr. Silver, and Dr. Paulson, and Dr. Salway is here. So like I said, we're just going to talk about a little bit why this is important, the research right now on what's been done in residencies, and then the small groups. You all, raise your hand if you got the grieving method last night. Raise your hand if you got the spikes method. We'll go over that briefly before we start the small groups. So in general, you all probably remember in medical school when you did the delivering bad news with SPs. At that time, no one really had any clinical experience to say, why is this important? Right now, practicing physicians overwhelmingly feel like they didn't get enough time in residency to practice this before they're doing it. So a lot of time they're just kind of figuring out what works for them and the impact that can have if done incorrectly on someone's worst day. To do it correctly can really not really make it better, but you have the ability to not make it that much worse. What's already bad, don't make it worse, pretty much. And what is bad news? So you guys think of scenarios, but putting it into words, it's really when someone feels like there's no hope for the future, and when something that can have a really big mental, physical, or psychological impact. And practicing it, really figuring out what works for you and doing it in the most authentic, compassionate way possible, being able to communicate this in a empathetic way and using empathetic listening to do this is really the most important. So this is a pictorial model of the dialogue that was taken from a Delivering Bad News course developed in the University of North Carolina, just kind of showing what happens during this exchange. Really, it's identifying the emotion that either the patient is expressing when you deliver this news, or the family member or the spouse, figuring out how the physician emotionally responds to that, and then being able to articulate back that you understood what they were saying, what they expressed. And that's really just, it's all about the therapeutic dialogue and having this together. So this is the spikes method. This was actually developed, the literature it's the most used, and it actually was developed to be used to deliver bad news to a patient instead of the death notification. And it's really just pretty much, to summarize, it's like six different steps. It's really just getting off to a good start, finding out how much they know, how much do they want to know, sharing the information, and then responding to the feelings, and then kind of being able to discuss the next steps and how they're going to have the contact going forward. The other one that you guys got is the grieving mnemonic, which was developed specifically to do the death notification, which is often most used in the ED specifically. And there was a systematic review in 2018, which was one of the most recent ones, that kind of took together what do these types of classroom or SP or small groups, what kind of impact does that have? And it actually showed that it does improve the delivering of news, the way it's delivered, and it also showed that it improved physician confidence. And that's important because we think about it as well as just improving the experience of the patient and the spouse or the family member, but it's often distressing to the physician, that exchange. And in order, if a physician goes in more confident and has a better exchange, it really lessens the emotional burden on the physician too, and kind of improves well-being. So that systematic review showed that it did improve physician well-being, better news delivery, but more studies need to be done on how it impacts the patient's depression, patient's anxiety in general. So actually, this was actually just 9 responses, but if we had kept it going, which we probably would have seen, most of the faculty didn't really use a specific method. Wait, yeah. So which kind of makes sense when you think about how when we start out like with our books as med students and we're kind of like referencing stuff, and then later, you know, you figure out what works for you, you're just going through it and you're not following, you're just doing what works. And that actually, in some ways, if you think about it, you're probably more authentic, you're probably more compassionate, you're probably more empathetic if you're not, you know, just going through it. What works for each individual person is going to be different. So we'll see today, we're going to look at a couple different methods.